I'd like to introduce the first video, which is called Éxitos y Triunfos, Successes and Triumphs. And this video chronicles some of the milestones of the River City Hispanics, from the initiation of the Cuban American Club to the founding of Brooks College of Health Nutrition Program, to the growth of the Spanish language radio stations in our town. We still have successes to accomplish as we strive for equal political representation for Hispanics in all facets of the county, city, and state governments. So let's go ahead and begin.
There was like maybe 10 families that were Cuban, and here in Jacksonville we're both Cuban, and God put us together here, not in Cuba, and that would be rare for you to be another Cuban person here in high school. So that was really awesome. And my mother had met him before me at the Cuban club at some function. I never used to go much, but I was invited to a dance, a senior dance there for a Cuban American children's family, and I met him there. There was a Cuban American club. It was off of Phillips Highway, I believe, and they used to have it used to be a building, and they had a softball field, and they had a pool, and the Cubans would go there on the weekends. They would play dominoes, they would have dances, they would have meals, they would just spend the weekend there. They would go there to the club, like my dad would go there to play poker with a lot of Cuban doctors that my dad was friends with. A lot of Cuban doctors came. And they passed and they did well, and they were practicing medicine here. They had all kinds of people, and my dad was one of the doctors. And his name is Roberto, R-O-B-E-R-T-O, Mures, M-U-R-E-S. And he was very much he was like a mayor, they used to call him, because anybody that would come into the city that just got here from Cuba or another Hispanic, mainly Cubans, he would find them jobs, he would take them places, he would teach them how to drive, he would take them to the Lutheran social services. He was so missed when he passed away. He was a people person, I'm telling you. But yeah, the Cuban American Club is on Phillips Highway. Then they switched it to off of Sunbeam Road. They had to move. They had to sell it for some reason. The committee, and those men have died off, and unfortunately their children, they didn't keep it. I can say I'm guilty that even though my dad was a founder, but in the busyness of my life, it wasn't a Christian thing, so I said, I have to get my energy in things of God. And then they made it a Hispanic Latin club. That didn't work either. Then finally they sold it to the Catholic Charities, the building and the place. But it died off.
So I actually started working at UNF in 1988. And at the time, the University of North Florida did not have a nutrition program. And then I think around 1987, they started the College of Health. And they had one person who used to teach nutrition classes to the nursing students because it's required. And I worked for about 2 years as an advisor, and then in the either 90s or early 90s, it got accredited, and that's when I moved into the faculty position. When I mentioned that it was only 1.7% Hispanic, my husband and I are fairly acculturated, I think I would say, but we still like Spanish culture and Spanish food, and we really love it. We were upset that we weren't getting an ability to practice Spanish with anybody, and that we couldn't hear Latin music anywhere. And then we found out that there was a Latin band in town. And so we went to listen, and my husband plays instruments, so he approached them afterwards, and they got him in the band. So it was great, because I would say for a good 20 years, at least, he played with the band, And so we created a set of friends with a common
for 2 years. When I moved here, I was looking for radio station, for media companies. And the only station that it was, a Spanish station, I think it was just on the weekend for a few hours, Victor Cora, that station. It was, I think the name was Latin Beaters, and there was just one local newspaper. And that person, she offered me like a type of partnership, and I started working with the newspaper. And a year after we started working, we opened the first 24 hours radio station here in Jacksonville. That was in 2003. We opened the station Latino Hits 1160. Back in 2003, I remember that we pulled the census number. It was 55,000 Hispanic in Jacksonville. Anybody that you went right and you give somebody the address Hispanic, you like, what's surprised? I go, wow, there's somebody that address Hispanic here. That's awesome. Because, we took us, 20 years now, just to be in the number that we always want to be, which is 10% of the population. And then in 2005, another investor, they bought that station, the 1160, and he said, okay, you can stay with the company, you're going to be now my general manager, and we want another 2 stations. That was in 2006. And 2000, and actually have here in 2010, we opened the first FM station in Jacksonville. That was Caliente 105.3. And that was another group of radio. They hired me to open that station. In 2013, the Northern Group, there was a group that actually bought the station in 2005. They hired me back, and they opened another FM. And then they bought another FM in 2014. I didn't give you all the whole radio history of Jacksonville. And in 2017, we opened, I heard immediately opened the first FM Spanish station, for the group. That was in 2017. We opened Global 106.9. Since then, I kept working with IME, and now we have another FM. We have the first news talk stations in Jacksonville. I think so far I've been involved in 10 launching of
Starting here, I definitely noticed that there was no real ethnic representation for Hispanics. Like, I didn't feel like there was any Hispanic kind of community. Like the community, the Hispanics were maybe spread out. There was little stores here and there. You never heard anybody speaking Spanish anywhere. If you hear people speaking Spanish, you almost want to go up to them and ask them, who they were. Or it didn't really dawn on me to get involved in the community until I got here and I realized there was such an absence of representation, and we still don't have any elected officials in Jacksonville that are Hispanic. And we don't have any Hispanics and representatives in Tallahassee. We don't have any city council people. We don't have any school board people. There are some people who are, that work in City Hall. At least there used to be. I don't know about now with this mayor. There's definitely an absence of that. So when I came here and I saw that there was no ethnic diversity and there was no Hispanic representation, and that's what really made me learn more. And a friend of mine told me about the local Democratic Party, and so I started learning about, the state Hispanic caucus, and how they're a separate entity from the local city DECs. So I'm currently still, the president of the Democratic Hispanic Caucus. It's been like 6 or 7 years now. When Trump got elected, I was the chair of the Mayor Hispanic Board, and I was elected by my peers. I wasn't appointed by the mayor. It was at that time that I realized that we really needed to do something that kind of helped strengthen the image of Hispanics in Jacksonville, because I felt like there was this horrible cloud, that was coming through. And so we decided to do the Hispanic Film Festival. It was a good little event, and we had a nice turnout, but we couldn't continue doing it.
There's 240 delegates from around the entire world. And this is mayors and consuls and student groups and business groups, and it didn't really matter to me. They were all the same. They were all just people. Unfortunately, I kind of messed that up and never took any pictures with any of these people, so I couldn't even begin to tell you who they were. We actually had the consul from Mexico come to visit the mayor one time, and it was really an interesting conversation, because I don't think our mayor, while he knew that I spoke Spanish, I don't think he actually put two and two together. So when the consul was here, obviously he's got his interpreter with him, but we're sitting in the conference room, and I've got the mayor on one side and the consul on the other side. I'm sitting kind of in between the two of the translator and everybody else. And somehow, I began talking to our consul. He speaks to me in Spanish. I translate to the mayor in English. The mayor speaks to me in English. I translate and speak to him in Spanish. And all of a sudden, by the third time that happened, Mayor Brown looks at me and he says, "You speak Spanish?" I'm like, "Yeah, thank you."
I think you can see why they all became my best friends. They're a wonderful group, really. I could talk to you about all the milestones in Jacksonville, but I would really rather the narrators do it for you. So I'm going to continue, and our second one will be the shorts, and it's the highlights, the impact of Latinas in our fair city in different areas, from the first Hispanic woman to be named FBI Special Agent in Charge, to nonprofit founders, and to prominent businesswomen. So, thank you.
And so that is when I really discovered Jacksonville and really started
Real cruelty. I had these bracelets and I forgot them at school one day, and I was already on the bus had taken off, and I started screaming at the top of my lungs in my best English. But it wasn't really English. I was saying my pulseras, but I just put an accent on it, and I was saying my pulseras. And I thought that was English. But I was crying. The whole bus is now, at this point laughing at me. It was then know, I'm different. And it was that first time that I felt different, you know, not like everybody else.
Leadership requires responsibility to not just the organization, but to the community as a whole. I always say, unidos somos más, and that is what we need to continue to do.
I would go out to the mall or whatnot, and it was very rare to hear somebody speaking Spanish. In fact, whenever I would hear it, I'd be like, oh my gosh, somebody speaking Spanish. Now I go out and I hear Spanish being spoken almost everywhere. And I believe at the time I was the only Latina on air here.
And can I tell you a funny story? My grandmother was very, she was a jealous lady, right? And my grandmother was so handsome, so she would send me with him. She said, you want to go with him in the morning? You get up really early. I would go with him. And then when we got back, she would ask me, who did you see over there? And I would say, well, we saw Negrita, we saw Guapa. It was like saying, you know, cutie and sweetheart. And I said, well, we saw cutie and sweetheart. And of course, I don't think he had a really good day after that. But I was very innocent. I didn't know. I thought those were their names. Adios, linda, adios, guapa, adios, negrita. Tell her all these ladies that we saw.
And that's where I think I, certainly learned a lot about, these national associations and when it came to Jacksonville. And I'm like, so where's our Black MBA chapter? What? We don't have a Black MBA. You mean you don't have a Hispanic, MBA chapter? It's been 18 years and we still don't have a Prospanica. So one of the things that I tried to do when I was getting ready to close down the hill, is we actually tried to transition the organization to a chapter of Prospanica.
And I remember him being so proud of being Puerto Rican. He would hang this huge Puerto Rican flag outside of our house. And I would get home from school every day. I was in high school, I was probably like a junior. And I would take the flag down. I was so embarrassed, and I don't know why. I was so upset, why are you taking it off? So I would take it down, and I would put it in like this closet. And every day I would come home, it was hanging again. And so we did that every day for like a week or two. And then he thought it was my mom who took it down. And then when he found out it was me, he gets so upset. He's like, why would you, it's still important for us, like we're proud, and so, there was even the law that Puerto Ricans weren't even allowed to show the flag because it was like criminalized and things like that. So even just realizing that now that he was so proud and that, I kind of try to take that on now.
In 2017, we were getting a massive
for individuals that were getting arrested as collateral effects, that were getting picked up on random raids, that were, just being torn apart from their families. And so we quickly had to reshift our focus in something that I had already been doing, just not on a grand scale, but deportation defense. So we get a lot of clients who get a lot of racism from their tenants. So yeah, everywhere. In school, children receive a lot of bullying from their classmates about, and especially during the 2016, 2017 years, we got a lot of complaints. We had a lot of kids that were having to go to therapy because of the level of bullying that they were experiencing as a result of their parents being immigrants. And they have Hispanic last names, Lopez, Sanchez, Martinez, and so it's not, you can't really hide that. And so we did experience a lot of that.
2016, 2017, someone had to do a racist drawing at the library study room that you have, where it turns out Latinos, African Americans, Asians getting back on the boat to go home, to go back to wherever they came from. And there was a big writing on the board, "Make America White Again." And it really struck a lot of feelings with a lot of students, especially myself. So when the three cultural clubs, the Black Student Union, the Asian Students in Alliance, and the Latin American Student Organization, we had our bi-weekly meetings, I said like, hey, this happened. What are we going to do about this? Because, people are going to look at us for an example. And with the other presidents, we organized a town hall where President Delaney, the president of the university at the time, attended. A lot of students, a lot of people that weren't even involved with the university, that just wanted to get their opinions heard and hear other people's opinions. But I did see the drawing. It was very interesting. It struck a lot of nerves and a lot of feelings. It was the reality that we were living in, a sad reality that those things were happening. But it did make me question what I had done that year as president of LASA, because I was on a mission to educate people about our culture. And I felt at that time maybe I hadn't done enough. But sometimes you can work as much as you want, and sometimes to some people it just won't make a difference. So, if they close the door on learning or educating themselves, there's only so much you can do. But a student can only learn when it's willing to learn.
One of the things that was happening back then is that there was a lawsuit for discrimination between the NAACP and the school board, okay? And the way that the school board behaved, was just black and white. They could care less, Native Americans, Hispanics, Indians or whatever. And when George took his problems, of discrimination to the school board, they said, we don't recognize it. We haven't got that data, and plus you don't count anyway, because what we have to meet is that we have to meet the black imposed requirement, black court imposed requirements, of the settlement. There was a set aside of sorts that the city purchased. Okay, and George had brought this up, to friends that used to get, there were two architects, there were one engineer, George, and several other business people that used to get together, and we would talk about that. And then the city purchasing department passed a set aside rule, okay, that only recognized, blacks and women because of the lawsuit of the NAACP. And they passed out for public hearing. And we saw that as the guys, BP has been taking, whatever access we had, we've been taken out of it. So we said, what do we do? And then that's when we started Hispanic American Business Association. okay? And we represented not only us, but also the Native Americans and then the Indians, the Asian Americans. And then on the basis of that, we went to Warren. Warren was a very junior. I think that he had just been elected. You know, we told us, you being black, we ought to recognize that's not fair. He said, we're going to take this thing apart. And each of us, you know, knew just about the entire council, and that's the word that we get back to them. And they said this was part, you know, this whole thing is going to be real inhumane. Because in order to be able to do a set-aside, there has got to be a study, you know, for disparity. You know, and it's going to take us about a year to do it. And it says, if you know, if you guys, you know, hang tight, you know, and don't agitate, and, you know, threaten, and all of the things that we, you know, had communicated to them, you know, so we'll go ahead and get you included. And then we agreed to do that. And that, in fact, you know, did happen. We became active during that whole 1 year period because we did everything politically and business-wise possible, you know, to unite the Hispanic community. Yet a consultant came back and did the disparity study. They went through review, and then the ordinance was promulgated and passed.
And so I joined the Navy. I was on an aircraft carrier for 3 years. The Saratoga, which happened to be home ported here in Jacksonville, Florida. So from 1961 to 64, I was exposed to Jacksonville, and remember the Civil Rights Act didn't come into effect until 64. You know, now I experienced situations, encounters, and it went the gamut. You know, there were times I would sit at the counter and there was no problem. Times where I'd be sitting at the counter and I'd feel somebody touching my shoulder, and I turn around and it's a cop and he's telling me to get the hell out. And in those days, they all had alleys with windows, and so blacks could go into the alley and order food at like I say, I did a lot of hitchhiking in those days. We used to hitchhike from Jacksonville to Miami on weekends. You know, just to hang out with our quote unquote our own, okay, the Cuban population down there, the beaches and so forth. And so I experienced certain things. One example was in let's see, it was just south of Orlando, and I got picked up for hitchhiking. So I remember getting picked up by the policemen, and again they were all white Southerners, and they were nasty, boy, I remember he's telling me, boy, he says, you're gonna be put on a chain gang, but we're driving, he starts, he says, where are you coming from? I said, Jacksonville, Florida. What do you do there? I said, I'm in the Navy. And he said, what ship are you on? And I said, the Saratoga. He says, my nephew's on the Saratoga. He said, so this is what I'm going to do for you, boy, okay? I'm going to take you to the Greyhound bus terminal. I want you out of my town. I don't care what bus you take or where it's going, but you need to get out of my town, okay? And so again, that was, an example. I can give you lots of other examples of things like that, but you just like saying.
I do have two others, but in the interest of time, I know that we only have 5 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and cut it there, not unless you want to see one more, the 5-minute one, the last one, number 6. Is everyone okay with that, watching one more, the 5 minutes? Okay, number 6, I think.
He's in New York. My husband applied for a job here at UNF and he got the job. And I said, okay, so let's move to Jacksonville. I will eventually find a job. I was very lucky that the following year they opened up a position and I applied and got it. And, we're here happy.
Entonces estaba hablando con mi primo y le dije, creo que me mudo para Florida. Y mi primo vive en Florida, en Jacksonville. Y me dijo, pues vénganse para acá. Y yo dije, yo creo que me voy pronto.
So if you go into any ER or any clinic or anything, and you ask, how many of you guys are nurses at this facility? You will probably see max 2 nurses, because the rest of them are travel nurses. And I'm like, this pandemic is really taking a toll on everybody.
And because of their affluence, I believe they weren't as subjected as most of the people in Cuba. The baseball stadium that Obama spoke in, that was my grandfather's stadium.
I started a company again at the age of 19. My company is grown. 10 years after that, we had 20 employees. And we were working with all over the multinational companies in Colombia. I was working with
I came in 1968. We didn't have any money or anything. Everything we had was nationalized. We only had the house and the farm. And so there was money in the bank, but because we applied to come to the United States, that money was, they freeze that money, was frozen.
So for me, it was very exciting. Because I got to Florida, which is someplace I really wanted to come to. My father lives in South Palm Beach, so it was important for me to get to Florida. And I loved it. I love the fact that the city is so diverse. And since I grew up in diverse communities, coming here was an easier transition because of the community that's here. And it just continues to grow. It's amazing how much change has happened here in just 2.5 years. And the amount of different cultures that are coming in, it's pretty, I think it's exciting.
How my parents put it, Cuba wasn't the same after the collapse of the Soviet Union. It started declining rapidly. It was looking like it was in the ruins. And I remember my mom told me that my godfather had said, this is your opportunity to get my goddaughter out of here and give her a better future.
So when people were tuning in, they wanted to listen to Millie Colón because Millie Colón always had something positive to say, and not everybody laughing and whatever. So the people still tell me that, it's nice. They used to call me La Gatita, and I used to have a whip sound, a whipping sound, and on air, Millie Colón La Gatita, shh. And people would call me, the lady would call me saying, Millie, my husband has been a bad husband. I told him this weekend that to pick up, and he didn't do this and that. I want you to whip him with your latinazo. And I would go, really? You want me to whip your husband? Yes. You're his girlfriend. He listens to you. I want you to give him a latinazo. And I was saying to her, you know what you want to do? I'm going to give you my latigazo. Are you ready? Hold it. Hold it. Hold it tight. Okay, I'm holding it. What do you want me to do? Okay, now tell your husband to, turn around. Is he ready? Yeah, he's ready. He's ready, Billy. I'm ready. Okay, so 1, 2, whoosh. I am telling you, the 3 lines, people calling one after the other, wanting the same thing. Unbelievable. I am telling you, we used to spend hours with our listeners and all the people